I'm George Galloway, leader of the Workers' Party of Britain, and every week at this time I'm here giving you our perspective on the great national and international events. If you like what you see, I hope that you will join us, but even if you will not join us, please follow us through all our social media portals so that at least you are aware of how we see things. There's only one subject really that I can discuss this evening, much as I'd love to discuss others, like the fact that Salvador Allende's granddaughter is now the Minister of Defense in Chile, in charge of the army that murdered her grandfather. How piquant is that, or should I say picante? I wish her all the best. There's many other issues that I'd like to talk about, but we can't get away from the division in the British ruling elite, which is definitely reaching crisis point. It's easy to imagine that this division is about personalities, and Boris Johnson, of course, has one, while Keir Starmer does not. Neither, it appears, does Boris Johnson's rivals inside the Conservative Party, which is one of the reasons why he's still there. But the divisions are political, even ideological in nature, and one has to properly analyse them to come to any sensible conclusion about where all this is going. The news has been dominated for the last couple of hours about the fact that Piers Corbyn and a small group of unwashed Harrys shouted mean words, although actually, as someone who's been on the receiving end of mean words, they actually weren't all that mean. They were, why have you betrayed the working class? Why have you prosecuted Julian Assange? And allegedly, though I must say I never heard that, and I couldn't vouch for who shouted it, if you get my meaning, why didn't you prosecute Jimmy Savile? The brouhaha has been a bravura performance by our political and media class. People who were utterly silent when I was seriously assaulted in the street whilst a member of Parliament could well have been murdered. The total silence from the British media and political class was deafening. But someone shouting words at Keir Starmer managed to seize the news agenda and the political agenda with a gusto and a synchronicity which proves the point that I made just a few weeks ago here, that there's a coup going on in the British state. Whether it's going to be successful or not, I think remains to be seen. But that there is a coup is undeniable. This would not normally even make the first half of the news. After all, when Cabinet Minister, former Leader of the House, Jacob Rees-Mogg, and his son were mobbed by unwashed Harrys, people treated it as if it was a joke. His son, his young son, schoolboy, terrified by a screeching mob shouting abuse at his father, that was treated as a joke. It was a "have I got news for you" type affair. Well, Michael Gove was mobbed far more robustly than Keir Starmer. Nobody put a finger on Keir Starmer in Whitehall this week. Not one finger. And we'll come to why he was even there in the first place in just a minute. But by the comparison of people being mobbed in politics, this was not a big story, yet it became, frankly, the only story in town, in Parliament, and on the television news, which ought to make you suspicious for a start. But let's analyse why he was there. It turns out, I was unaware of this in the beginning, that he had been in the Ministry of Defence, not Portcullis House, which is a couple of doors down, receiving a briefing on what the government was intending to do on the subject of Ukraine. That meant he could have walked along the embankment from the Ministry of Defence into Portcullis House and then through an entirely private walkway to which the public have no access at all from Portcullis House into Parliament. Why didn't he do so? This was not a secret demonstration. You could smell it before you could hear it. This was a group that had posted their intentions online and in leaflets. If we've really reached the stage where the police officers responsible for the protection of the leader of Her Majesty's opposition did not know that Piers Corbyn was outside in Whitehall, and that it might not be a great idea for the leader of the opposition, who, after all, had been so mean to Piers Corbyn's brother, Jeremy Corbyn, then we really do need Cressida Dick to move along there, officer, and someone else to take her place. If we really believe that the police, knowing of the presence of some 20 or 30 people mobbing in Whitehall on a whole range of subjects, from the Canadian truckers to the familiar down with vaccination and all of the other causes that this grouplet were concerned about, there was no reason at all for Keir Starmer to walk through them, but he did. When he did, someone apparently, again I never heard this, shouted about Jimmy Savile. Cue outrage across the political class that this was all the result of what the BBC calls Boris Johnson's false claims in relation to Keir Starmer and the failure of his department to prosecute Jimmy Savile. Well, first of all, it's not the BBC's business to determine which claims are true and which are false. The BBC News is supposed to report the news. One claim against another claim. It's up to the audience to decide which claim is false, which claim is true. But it was not a false claim that Boris Johnson made. And this is at the heart of the matter. He said that under Keir Starmer's directorship of the Public Prosecutor's Office, more time was spent prosecuting journalists than Jimmy Savile. Well, Your Honour, that is an undeniable fact. It would be an undeniable fact even merely because Jimmy Savile was not prosecuted. But the fact that Keir Starmer's department mercilessly pursued journalists, including the greatest of all journalists of our time, Julian Assange, is a matter of public record. So it is a true statement of fact that the department under Starmer spent more time prosecuting journalists than it did Jimmy Savile, even if only because Savile was never prosecuted in the first place. But this has morphed into a slur, a smear, a slander, now responsible for mob violence, though violence there was none, on the streets of Whitehall. We mustn't let them get away with this. I've been pondering over the last 48 hours as I've come under attack myself from some unlikely quarters. Amazing the number of Corbyn supporters rushing to the defence of Keir Starmer. Talk about not being able to see the wood for the trees. I've been ruminating on why this attack by Johnson has caused such pain and anguish in the section of the ruling elite that is championing Keir Starmer's claim to be Prime Minister. New Labour is extremely vulnerable on these kind of matters. First, because it is true that Savile was not prosecuted when Keir Starmer was the Director of Public Prosecutions. Now, he may say that he was not in any way involved in the decision on whether or not to prosecute a knight of the realm, a friend of the royal family, a frequent guest at Chequers. If he wasn't, why wasn't he? Who but the Director of Public Prosecutions should have been involved in a review of such matters? He may claim that he never got involved in the details that were being chewed over by lesser mortals within his department, but that isn't true either, because I have seen videos of 7 occasions in which Keir Starmer, as Sir Keir Starmer MP, has taken credit for decisions made by the Director of Public Prosecutions Department, even though he was not himself the officer reviewing that prosecution. So he was happy to take the credit for decisions that were made by others, but not prepared to take the blame for decisions made by others and which now turn out to have been disastrously wrong. How many people's lives would not have been ruined by Jimmy Savile if he had been prosecuted at the time that he should have been prosecuted? I'll leave for you to judge. Incidentally, I commend to you the Honourable Craig Murray's latest piece on his blog on these and other associated matters. Was sent on Twitter. I have no idea who sent it to me. Somebody said they were my activists. I don't even know who they are, right? But they sent me a jolly helpful video of me and my wife and our then comrade Yvonne Ridley in Rotherham 10 years ago, denouncing the failure to prosecute grooming gangs in Rotherham for party political electoral reasons. How helpful is that, whoever you are? Thanks for doing that. Who was the Director of Public Prosecutions at the time? Well, it was Keir Starmer, seen as you ask. They're very vulnerable, Labour, to the charge, well-founded charge, that in many places, many cities, in Lambeth, in Leicester, perhaps above all in Rotherham, Labour were either asleep or were turning a Nelson's eye to horrific sex crimes being committed on their watch and in their patches in their electoral heartlands. Greville Janner, anyone? Lambeth Council, anyone? Care Homes, anyone? Rotherham, anyone? Labour are surprisingly and uniquely vulnerable. It's a very dark underbelly. Perhaps they're hoping that it doesn't get any more traction. Perhaps that's why they have reacted so hysterically to the true statement of fact made by Boris Johnson. Now to the issue of what this division is all about. It's easy to think it's about Boris versus Rishi versus, what's her name, Liz versus Penny versus Keir. It's easy to look at politics that way. That's what the tabloidization of political coverage has led to over a very, very long time, of course. But it's not accurate. Of course, personalities come into things. Of course, some people don't like each other. Of course, some people are ambitious and want to displace other people so they can get the gig, the moment in the sun, and the big payday after you've left office. They've seen the Tony Blair movie. So should you if you haven't. I made it. these personal motivations and so on are important. But there are political, even ideological forces at work also. There is no doubt at all, from Michael Heseltine downwards or upwards, John Major downwards or upwards, the newspapers of the so-called liberal centrists, the Guardian and the Independent and so on. There's no doubt at all that there is a section of the British ruling class which simply refuses to accept that we have left the European Union. Their hatred of Brexit and Boris for Brexit is an all-consuming passion for them. Many of you probably don't know that. You probably don't look in the undergrowth of the FBPE, Waitrose, soft shoe shuffling, quinoa crowd. I do. I need to know what these people are saying, thinking and doing. And they definitely think that if they can get rid of Boris Johnson, in the words of Lord Adonis, never was a man less appropriately entitled. Lord Adonis, if Boris goes, Brexit goes. Heseltine said the same. Major said the same, or implied the same in Major's case. They think that if they can put the skids under Boris Johnson, a new Tory regime might come in that would be more ready to snuggle closer to the European Union, whilst another section of the ruling class, having proved himself, think that Keir Starmer is the man. Now, you may find that laughable. If ever a man was less qualified to be a political leader of a country adrift in a sea of troubles, it is the block of wood bobbing on the waves that is Keir Starmer. But believe it or not, there is a section that thinks that Johnson has to go, that none of his contemporaries are capable, and therefore the auxiliary team will have to be brought back in. Now that it's been safely purged of all the things that made them so anxious in 2017 and 2019. And Keir Starmer is the personification of that. Corbyn has been purged. All of his fellows have been routed. All of his policies torn up. The 10 pledges of continuity made by Keir Starmer all turned out to be a pack of lies and have now completely renovated. New Labour, new Labour is the order of the day for one section of the ruling class. They know that they can count on Keir Starmer, on international affairs, on the Middle East, on relations with the United States, on hostility to Russia and China and so forth. And they know that he's not going to frighten the horses with any radical pro-worker policies here at home. It's only this week that he whipped his MPs into abstaining. The Workers' Party, we're proclaimers. Keir Starmer's party, they're abstainers. And they have again abstained on a measure which severely reduced, painfully, actually savagely reduced, the living standards of the poorest people in our country. Our pensioners are unemployed people, people in receipt of benefits, now effectively, given the rate of inflation, cut. The failure to support all workers' struggles to defend their living standards in the face of the onslaught already underway and about to become far more severe in the wake of the pandemic and its economic costs. All of these have convinced, persuaded the top brass in the British ruling elite that Keir Starmer is a safe pair of hands. And that's why they have rallied round him like never before, because somebody said some mean words to him in Whitehall. Jeremy Corbyn, then the leader of the opposition's picture, was on a target. which British soldiers were being encouraged to fire at. Think about that. Just a couple of years ago, Jeremy Corbyn was attacked, physically attacked. Jeremy Corbyn was the single most exposed to danger figure in this entire country, with no exceptions, not even the royal family. And of course, if you want to talk about mean words, where would I start and where would I end when the leader of the opposition was a different man to Keir Starmer? So this struggle is not over yet. Boris Johnson's friends have rallied. He's had a he shuffle, as they say. Nobody lost their job, not many did, but he has moved one or two pieces on the chessboard. He's going to have to do more, I suspect, if he's going to fend off the attack by those who want rid of him. But it's not just Brexit. And this, I think I need to tell you, because many people who regard themselves as left-wing have fallen for this canard. I've heard it said that Boris Johnson is the most right-wing Conservative Prime Minister that Britain's ever had. This from people who presumably don't remember Margaret Thatcher and Keith Joseph and Norman Tibbet and all the other bone crunchers of that era. But in truth, a lot of Conservatives, a lot of people in the ruling class don't like Boris Johnson precisely because he's not very Conservative at all. The public expenditure record of Johnson's government is certainly far more lavish than any Labour government would ever have spent. All this dangerous talk about levelling up, it doesn't matter that it's bollocks. It's the thought that counts. It's the thought that we're recognising that actually working class people in the north, but not just in the north by any means, in this low wage economy of ours, have over decades suffered a real terms cut in our living standards, and that something must be done about it. The Tories under Johnson wouldn't do much about it, but the fact that they've identified it and are publicly committed to doing something about it is what worries a section of the ruling class. They just don't think that Johnson is nearly Conservative enough. He's too woke, he's too liberal. Crikey, you could hardly get more liberal. He's a party kind of guy, if you know what I mean. Boris Johnson may cling on. He may be replaced by someone more amenable to the right, or someone more amenable to the centre, or someone who pretends that they can traverse that chasm, if chasm indeed is the right word to use to describe it. But one thing the Workers' Party will continue to do, as I've tried to do again here this evening, is to tell the truth. The truth as we see it. We might be right, we might be wrong, but you can depend on us to be telling you the truth as we see it. You can depend on us not to be lying to you. We didn't come to our policies and our positions by consulting focus groups. We came to them because we believe them. We believe in them. We believe that these are the ways forward for our people, and we will never change. We have red lines. We are flexible, of course, in our relations, dealings with other people, as we have just shown in Birmingham in a forthcoming by-election. But we have red lines from which we will never move. We are the party of the workers, for the workers, and it's the workers' interests that we will defend to the death. We will defend the territorial integrity of our country to the death. We believe in defence. Many of our members are actually ex-military men. One's even ex-French Foreign Legion. We're not pacifists. We don't want to disarm Britain. We don't want to leave Britain defenceless so anybody, any country, whether France or Russia, whether the United States or China, can come and take us over and push us around. That's not. We are standing for the territorial integrity and independence of Britain. That's why we supported Brexit and oppose separatism in Scotland and Wales. You can count on us. We're solid people. We believe in common sense socialism. I hope that one day so will you. Thanks for watching. Come back next week at the same time, same place.